I guess probably the first thing to mention is, well, if what I'm wearing is cultural misappropriation, I'll apologize. I personally love this though. It is the best thing to wear in the summer. It covers everything that needs to be covered, and it's so nice and light that the sweat doesn't stick to me. Now that I have that out there, now on to this month. Really, the big thing to mention is I've noticed that after having surgery, I feel like I don't have to compensate as much for being a woman. Now that probably my biggest source of dysphoria is gone, well, I feel a fair bit closer. Don't get me wrong, the dysphoria is still there. I mean, it's just kind of transferred to other areas. Like, I was kind of hoping to be a little bustier. It annoys me that I still have to shave. I'll just save it at that, actually. I'm just annoyed I have to shave. I guess that's something to bring up as well, is I found that it's something that I'm looking for, if that makes any sense. Like, I think I could go a few days without shaving and nobody's really going to question my femininity. The problem is I'm like this close to the mirror and I'm seeing all these little stubble marks. I'm just like, how am I to do? Oh, come on. When in actuality, some guy in the street's going to see me and just kind of be like, time to get some more groceries. Or more than that, they're probably just going to see me and be like, okay, whatever. I find on the whole, people just don't care as long as you don't shove it in their face. But that's a subject for another video I'm thinking of. But speaking of videos on a single subject, there was one that I saw that I'm still not really sure I understand, but perhaps if I get my thoughts out, or maybe I'm even able to talk to other people about it, might be able to make sense of it. It was all about the idea of what was called internalized transphobia. Like I say, I don't really understand it, as the video that this subject was brought up in is basically saying that if you have extremely high standards for yourself, then that's transphobic. And then I remember the video asking, why are we like this? Now, that is something I feel is pretty easy to answer. Let's just kind of pull up various pictures of supermodels. Well, they're kind of creating a pretty high standard of beauty. And as a trans woman, that's a very difficult standard to uphold when you start off looking like this. Then again, people tell me that this is just something that cis women have basically had to deal with ever since, well, they were born. So the idea that we start out not really feeling that way, or maybe some people don't really feel that way, and then later adapting to feeling like they have to be that way to be a quote-unquote real woman, then like I say, I didn't really understand the video. In fact, there was actually another video that tackled this same subject, and I don't really get it. I would figure if people are talking about internalized transphobia, it's more about the idea of, like, how you see yourself. So I guess I would say signs of my internalized transphobia is I don't really see myself as a woman unless I've had this surgery that I went through. Or that I have so much less hair on my body, if I have a more deeper, manlier sounding voice. Or at the very least, a little less hoarse. I'm not really sure why I sound this way right now. And I would figure maybe that would be the more internalized transphobia, and then perhaps this is how you see yourself to be a real woman, and you see this is how other trans people have to be for them to be women. Feel free to leave your comments down below, because much like a chopped down tree, I am stumped. But I guess that leads into another bit of a talking point I have. the idea of, well, women are held to insanely high beauty standards. And I guess I kind of hold myself to these standards as well. I mean, I get the idea I'm probably not going to be a supermodel, and, well, I'm not really sure if I do. They seem like they would be insanely weak. The kind of person that if you just kind of go, then they'll just fall over like a sheet of paper. But I want to be seen as conventionally beautiful. And I want to state right now that if you're fine with the way you look, that's good. More power to you. But me, I guess the only way I can explain it is I want to look like a woman, and, well, for a long time I feel like I'm just kind of stuck in this middle ground between being too manly looking to be a woman, but being too feminine enough to look like a man. I'll say it's a little discouraging when there are people out there that try to be encouraging by basically saying, yes, you'll never be a supermodel, you'll look just like your mother. And I feel like there's a few other instances of people trying to be encouraging like that, but it comes off as very discouraging. Like, the biggest example I can think of is people will say things like, well, you don't need to transition to be trans. Or just a simple mantra of, you're valid. You can keep your validity. I don't care if I'm validly a woman. I want a typical stranger on the street to see me as a woman rather than, well, I don't really know what I'm seen as, but more people say sir to me than ma'am at this point, and it's disheartening to say the least. It's like the equivalent of taking a really difficult course, but you feel like you perfectly understand it. And then the test comes back and you got an F minus. I thought I was getting a handle on this, and then you just kind of get a punch in the face saying, no you don't, you gotta try harder. You may have noticed that when I do these videos, I usually wear this ring. The main reason for this is I've just always been a big ring person. I remember back in elementary school, I found a Freemason ring when I was at a thrift store. National Treasure just came out, and I was obsessed with the movie. And I love rings, so I wanted to wear it around. However, after several years, I'm just kind of thinking to myself, I'm by no means a Mason, and this feels a bit like false advertisement. So, I wanted to find a ring that spoke more to who I am as a person. So, I found this ring at a garage sale. A Boy Scout ring, actually. If you can see that, it's hard to say if it's focusing too well. And this is something that better represented who I am. In fact, not sure if I ever mentioned it, but I did make it to that coveted rank of Eagle Scout. As I started to transition, it felt a little strange to be wearing something that belongs to the Boy Scouts of America. And so, that is where I found my trans ring. Now, why do I bring this up? I was just kind of thinking back to this one trans meme I saw. As you might have been able to guess, I love trans memes. I also love prequel memes too, but it's not very often you ever see them come together. But the meme I remember, it showed a picture of the rainbow flag, and it said right at the bottom, I fly this not to shove it in everybody's faces, but to basically say, I will not judge you by your sexuality. For me, like I said, I'm just a big fan of rings, and this represents who I am. But more so than that, I find that those that don't like what I stand for, what I am, those that don't like me for being trans, they know the rainbow flag, and that's the first thing they're going to immediately attack. They don't really know what any of the other flags mean. So, when I wear this ring, it's a way of basically signaling to other club members that, yep, I'm also a part of the club. And so perhaps I can even meet some more trans people this way, as I'm not gonna lie, I have not met a lot of nice trans people, and I'd like to change that. I would like to meet a trans person that I feel like I don't have to hide myself from, that I can just be me around. I guess I have views that I'm not supposed to have as a trans person. They're considered evil, and then by extension, I'm considered evil. And when that happens, they don't really see me as human, so they don't treat me as human anymore. The other reason I like to wear this ring is to educate people. There's a lot of people I've bumped into that I tell them I'm trans, and they're just like, wow, you seem level headed. You seem sane. I'm here to not only break the stigma that I'm not a Karen that is yelling about how my rights are being taken away. In fact, I'd feel a bit like a hypocrite if I did that, as I'm good where I am. I mean, I've got my hormones, I can own property, I got a stable job. It's kind of hard to complain about stuff that I already have. But then again, people are probably going to say that's not the point. You have to keep arguing to keep that stuff, but it gets difficult because this kind of crosses the territory in the politics, and whenever that happens, I see some of the worst humanity has to offer. And I gotta say, I've been hurt by a lot more trans people than the allegedly close-minded people that the trans people say are close-minded. But either way, that is one of my goals. That is one of the reasons why I like to wear this ring. To basically say that we're not all nutcases. In fact, I want to say that it's a very small minority, but, well, I've been running into more nuts than if I'm chowing down on a good old slice of pecan pie. Maybe I can find somebody that's a little more on the reasonable side. I think I will end the video with this. A rather fascinating interview with a particularly fascinating person. I'm so worried about mispronouncing her name that I'm just going to put it right here. What makes her very fascinating is she is a devout Catholic who is also trans. I run into so many people that say such a thing cannot exist. Now, I'm by no means a devout Catholic, but I'm faithful. And this is always a bit of contention. In fact, there's a lot of bits of contention. I just wish things didn't have to be so binary, so everything or nothing. Either you agree with the trans community or you're not trans. Can we have a halfway in between? Can I not agree with certain things of the trans community but still be a supporter? According to a lot of people, no. And that very much annoys me, but I'm getting off subject. She has a very strong personality. Not only the idea that, well, she took up quite a brave bit of activism, but even more so than that is the idea that she's very much practicing what I'm told I need to strive for. The idea that she loves everybody, especially the people that hate her. She's praying for those that do not know any better, as they need the help more than anybody else does. And just the idea that she can not only love somebody that hates, but also even forgive such a thing. I am not that person. I hold some very intense grudges. I'm very much reminded of, I think it was from Avatar: The Last Airbender, where I think it was Katara realized who it was that killed her mother, and as such, she wanted to go on a journey of revenge. Aang is basically saying forgiveness is really hard, to which Katara says it's not just hard, it's impossible. And that's very much how I feel. I've been hurt by a lot of people. And I think this is one of the problems I have is not sure if I've mentioned it either, but I'm a relatively big Star Wars fan. I'm not the kind of person to be able to explain the deep lore that happens in the prequels, but I at least know a fair bit about the Force to know that I definitely would be in the Sith. I find power from grudges, from wanting revenge, from anger, from all this other stuff, and there's probably a lot of other people out there that feel this way. But the idea that she is able to find power through love and forgiveness, all the power to her, that is more strength than I think even exists within me. But there's been several circumstances people would say, you're so brave or whatnot. Well, I guess maybe I'll just go on a little bit of a quick tangent here. So, people realize I'm trans, I've gone through surgery and whatnot. That's one of the first things people go for is saying, you're so brave. I very much relate to this panel right here from a favorite manga of mine. I don't want to be brave. I want to be a cute woman. But regardless, it was just nice to hear that not all trans people were part of the hive mind. I always felt like I was a bit of an outsider because I have different perspectives on things, that I'm not willingly drinking the Kool-Aid on every single issue there is out there. But every so often just kind of stopping and being like, is this really the best way to do it? Yes, drink up, otherwise you are not part of our group. And that's probably another thing as well to just kind of show how powerful this woman is well, she's had to put up with just as much hate from the trans community as the, well, whatever you want to call that community. And the idea that she loves both equally. I think that's all I've got for now. I've got a few subjects that I skipped out of this video that I figure will make fun standalone videos now that we're in the mythical Pride Month again. But if you got any little suggestions or whatnot, feel free to leave a comment. And until next time, be yourself, no matter who that is.